There's a moment in Shibuya where Yuji Itadori stands over the mutilated bodies of people he couldn't save, watching Mahito reshape human souls like clay, and Sukuna offers him a deal. 1 minute of control, 60 seconds to kill the curse that's murdered hundreds in front of him. And Yuji says no. He refuses because accepting would mean giving ground to the thing living inside him. It would mean compromise. It would mean admitting that sometimes saving people requires making deals with monsters. But what if the weight of all those corpses, all those transfigured humans begging for death, was too much? What if just once Yuji chose saving lives over preserving his own moral purity? That single decision doesn't create a hero, it creates something far more unsettling. Because when you let a god of curses back into the world, even for 60 seconds, you don't get to control what happens after. You just get to live with it. The deal seems simple. Mahito is winning. Yuji is exhausted, injured, watching his friend Nobara get hit by idol transfiguration. Todo is fighting, but can't land a killing blow. Every second Mahito exists, more people die. And Sukuna, who despises Mahito for touching his soul without permission, offers the obvious solution. Give me control for 1 minute and I'll erase him from existence. No binding vow beyond the time limit, no hidden cost, just 1 minute to solve an unsolvable problem. Yuji accepts, and for 60 seconds, Shibuya experiences what happens when the King of Curses decides something deserves to die. Mahito doesn't get a fight, he doesn't get last words or a dramatic final stand. Sukuna manifests, locates him instantly through cursed energy detection, and dismantles him at the molecular level with surgical precision. Cleave and dismantle tear through Mahito's soul faster than idol transfiguration can adapt. It's not a battle, it's an execution. Mahito, who spent the entire arc playing with human lives, dies in 4 seconds, and Sukuna spends the remaining 56 seconds doing exactly what Yuji feared he would do. He doesn't go on a rampage, that would be inefficient. Instead, Sukuna examines the barrier keeping him in Shibuya, analyzes the curse technique maintaining it, and burns the methodology into his memory. He studies Gojo's prison realm ceiling from a distance, confirming the strongest sorcerer is neutralized. He identifies every special grade curse in the area and calculates how many fingers it would take to kill each one. Then he returns control to Yuji with one sentence: "You're welcome." The immediate aftermath looks like victory. Mahito is dead. Nobara is wounded but survives with both eyes because Mahito never landed the killing blow. Todo keeps Boogie Woogie. The transfigured humans are already dead, but no more are created. Yuji collapses, and when he wakes up hours later in a field hospital, he's surrounded by sorcerers who are grateful. He saved lives, he ended the threat, but he can feel Sukuna in the back of his mind, and the King of Curses isn't angry about being used, he's satisfied.
Because Sukuna just learned something crucial. Yuji's moral boundary isn't absolute. It can be negotiated when the cost of refusing becomes too high. And that, not a weakness to exploit through force, it's a lever to manipulate over time. The first sign that something has fundamentally shifted comes 3 days later. Yuji is recovering in Tokyo Jujutsu High, and Sukuna speaks to him, not with threats, but with observation. "You let me kill Mahito. You gave me permission to end a life because you couldn't do it yourself. How does that feel?" Yuji doesn't answer, but the silence is damning, because it feels like relief. Mahito is dead, and dozens of people are alive because of that death, and Yuji can tell himself he didn't personally kill anyone. He just temporarily removed the barrier preventing the killing. The moral distinction is thin enough to see through, but thick enough to hide behind. Sukuna doesn't push further. Not yet. He just lets Yuji sit with that rationalization, knowing it's the first brick in a road that only goes one direction. The second sign comes during the aftermath meetings. The higher-ups want Yuji executed immediately, but now there's complications. He demonstrated he can cooperate with Sukuna for tactical advantage without losing control. That makes him valuable instead of just dangerous. Some sorcerers argue he's proven he can be trusted with limited Sukuna manifestations during crisis situations. Others argue this is exactly why he needs to die, because he's proven the line between him and Sukuna can blur. The debate rages while Yuji sits in a cell, listening to people discuss whether his existence is a strategic asset or an existential threat. Yaga and the remaining faculty manage to delay the execution, but the agreement is conditional. Yuji cannot manifest Sukuna again, under any circumstances. If he does, even to save lives, he'll be killed immediately. It's a binding resolution that everyone knows is unenforceable, because Yuji has already proven he'll make that choice when people are dying in front of him, and Sukuna has proven he can deliver results in under a minute. The third sign is psychological, and it's the most dangerous. Yuji starts justifying the decision retroactively. He tells himself Mahito was already a special-grade curse who needed to be eliminated, that Sukuna was going to be fed more fingers eventually anyway, that 1 minute of control exchanged for dozens of saved lives is a net positive by any utilitarian calculus. The rationalizations are logical, they're even correct, but they're also the cognitive scaffolding that will support every future compromise, and Yuji doesn't realize he's building his own prison. Sukuna watches this internal negotiation with the patience of something that has existed for 1,000 years. He doesn't interrupt, he doesn't mock, he just waits for the next crisis, knowing it's inevitable.
It comes 5 weeks later, during the Culling Game's initial chaos. Yuji is fighting a reincarnated sorcerer from the Heian era, someone with a technique that lets them detonate cursed energy inside a target's body. They've already killed 2 Grade 1 sorcerers and are holding a dozen civilians hostage inside a bounded field. Yuji is outmatched, not badly, but enough that winning will take time he doesn't have. The sorcerer is detonating 1 hostage every 3 minutes to draw out the fight, and Sukuna offers the same deal. 1 minute. That's all it ever is. And Yuji refuses, says he won't make that mistake again. And Sukuna doesn't argue. He just asks, how many civilians die while you prove your moral superiority? 3 more? 5? Will their families thank you for not compromising? The hostage count reaches 4 before Yuji accepts. This time, Sukuna takes 40 seconds to kill the sorcerer and 20 seconds to examine their curse technique, memorizing it for future reference. When Yuji regains control, he's standing in a circle of freed hostages who are crying with relief, and the cognitive dissonance is unbearable. He saved them. He absolutely saved them. But he did it by letting a monster wear his face and kill someone, and the gratitude in their eyes feels like acid. This becomes the pattern. Every few missions, Yuji encounters a situation where his strength isn't enough, and time is running out, and people are dying, and Sukuna offers the same transaction. 1 minute. That's all it ever is. And the missions succeed. Casualties drop. Yuji's reputation as someone who gets results grows, but so does his dependence on Sukuna's intervention, and so does Sukuna's understanding of the modern Jujutsu world. By the 3-month mark, Sukuna has manifested 8 times. He's killed 3 cursed spirits, 4 curse users, and 1 reincarnated sorcerer. He's memorized 17 curse techniques through direct observation. He studied the barrier techniques maintaining the Culling Game, and he's learned the political structure of the Jujutsu world's power distribution. Every manifestation is a recon mission, disguised as a mercy. Yuji notices the pattern, notices that Sukuna is always slightly more interested in studying his opponents than strictly necessary for killing them. So he doesn't. He just keeps accepting the deals when the alternative is watching people die. The turning point comes when Megumi is on the verge of death fighting Reggie Star. Yuji arrives too late,
finds his best friend bleeding out from a technique that's slowly crystallizing his internal organs, and Sukuna offers a different deal. 2 minutes of control, and I'll kill Reggie and heal Megumi using reverse curse technique. It's the first time Sukuna has offered to save someone instead of just killing an enemy. Yuji accepts before he can think about why this is different. Sukuna manifests, kills Reggie efficiently, then places his hand on Megumi's chest and floods him with reverse curse technique. Megumi's wounds close, his breathing stabilizes, he survives. And when Yuji regains control, Megumi is looking at Yuji with an expression that's equal parts gratitude and horror because he was conscious enough to feel Sukuna's cursed energy healing him. He knows what Yuji did. He knows what it cost, but he's alive because of it, and that fact poisons everything. The relationship between Yuji and Megumi fractures along a fault line neither of them can acknowledge. Megumi is grateful he survived, but he also knows Yuji is making deals with Sukuna now, and every deal gives the King of Curses more information, more manifestation time, more opportunities to analyze the world he'll eventually try to conquer. He still doesn't have enough fingers to fight the strongest sorcerers, but he's learned something more valuable. He doesn't need to fight them all at once. He just needs to wait for them to weaken each other, and then offer his help to whoever is losing.
The psychological erosion in Yuji becomes visible. He starts experiencing what therapists would call moral injury, the wound that comes from violating your own ethical code, even when you believe you had to. He knows he's saving lives. He has the body count to prove it. But he also knows he's doing it by making incremental deals with the King of Curses, and each deal makes the next one easier to justify. The slope isn't slippery, it's gradual, comfortable, a gentle descent into pragmatism that feels like maturity but looks like corruption from the outside. Todo notices during a training session, Yuji's fighting style has changed. He's taking fewer risks, relying more on technique than instinct. When Todo asks why, Yuji says he's being more strategic, but the real reason is that he's subconsciously preserving Sukuna as a failsafe. If he goes all out and still loses, he can't access the emergency option, so he fights at 90%, keeping 10% in reserve not for a final burst, but for the moment he decides the cost of losing is too high. The upper hands notice too. They call a meeting, demand to know how many times Sukuna has manifested. Yuji lies, says it's been twice, once for Mahito, once for the culling game sorcerer. He doesn't mention the other 12 times, because that would prove he's been regularly cooperating with Sukuna, and they'd execute him. The lie works. The upper hands are corrupt, not omniscient, but now Yuji is actively deceiving the Jujutsu authorities to protect his ability to access Sukuna's power, and that's a line he swore he'd never cross. Sukuna, observing all of this from inside Yuji's mind, finally speaks the quiet part out loud. "You've noticed you're more effective with me than without me. You've noticed people survive more often when you're willing to compromise. You've started thinking of me not as a curse you're containing, but as a resource you're managing. This is exactly what I wanted you to learn." Yuji doesn't respond, because Sukuna is right. The endgame scenario crystallizes when Yuji encounters Kenjaku. It's during the later stages of the culling game. Kenjaku just activated another batch of cursed object incarnations, and he's personally overseeing the chaos. Yuji confronts him, demands he stop. Kenjaku refuses, amused by how much Yuji has changed since Shibuya, and then he says something that recontextualizes everything. "You've manifested Sukuna 14 times now. Did you think I wasn't watching? Every time you let him out, you give him more fragments of autonomy. You're not borrowing his power, you're teaching him to exist in the modern world.
And when he reaches 20 fingers, he won't need to fight you for control. He'll just ask, and you'll say yes, because you've been saying yes for months.
Yuji realizes the trap. Not the one Kenjaku set, the one he set for himself. Every deal with Sukuna was voluntary. Every manifestation was justified. Every life saved was real. But the cumulative effect was teaching himself that compromise with Sukuna produces better outcomes than refusing him. He's been conditioning himself to view Sukuna as a necessary evil instead of an absolute evil. And necessary evils, by definition, are things you eventually stop resisting. Kenjaku leaves him with that revelation, disappearing into the chaos of the culling game. And Yuji stands there, surrounded by the consequences of months of small, justified compromises, understanding that he can't undo any of it. The people he saved are still alive. The enemies he killed through Sukuna still needed to die. The deals were all defensible individually, but the pattern they created is indefensible, and he built it 1 minute at a time. The final scene is Yuji, alone, feeling Sukuna's presence in the back of his mind, no longer threatening or demanding, just waiting, because Sukuna doesn't need to take control anymore. He's learned patience. He's learned that Yuji will eventually face a threat large enough, with stakes high enough, that he'll accept a longer deal, 10 minutes, an hour, whatever it takes to save everyone. And when that moment comes, when Yuji finally accepts a deal that gives Sukuna enough time to truly act, the King of Curses won't need to fight for control. He'll just need to ask, do you want to save them or not? And Yuji, who has spent months learning that saying yes produces better outcomes than saying no, will say yes again, because that's what good people do. They save others, even when the cost is themselves. The question was never whether Yuji could control Sukuna. It was whether Sukuna could teach Yuji to voluntarily give up control, 1 justified minute at a time, until the distinction between them blurred beyond recognition. The strongest curse isn't the one that forces you to submit. It's the one that makes you choose submission while believing you're choosing salvation. Yuji wanted to save everyone, and he will, right up until the moment he realizes everyone includes the King of Curses, and by then it will be far too late to remember why that's supposed to matter. So now you understand the terrifying consequences of one choice. Yuji's single decision didn't just change the battlefield, it reshaped the psychology of the living and the dead, and opened a path that even Sukuna can exploit. What do you think would happen if Yuji keeps saying yes? Would he become a hero or something far darker? Could anyone stop Sukuna when Yuji's moral compass bends with every compromise? Comment your thoughts below. How far do you think Yuji could go before he loses himself entirely? Subscribe for more deep dives into anime's darkest alternate timelines. Next video, we explore a scenario even more unsettling. See you in the next one.